Hello and welcome, SuccessGrid Nation, to this new live episode of the SuccessGrid podcast with your host Hassan Talib. In this episode, I have with me Rick DellaRatta. He is now considered by many to be one of the finest singers, pianists performing today, and one of the only of handful jazz artists who can make a successful musical presentation to a large audience without having to abandon the true art form of jazz. Throughout his lifelong endeavor to help advance people to their highest potential through the understanding of jazz, as well as spreading peace worldwide through his Jazz for Peace World Tour. Rick DellaRatta is considered to be an innovator and a visionary. Rick, welcome to the Success Grid podcast.
Thank you so much, Talib. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, Hussein. Okay, awesome. So first of all, from the introduction that I have read, like uh, this sentence that comes to mind, that having to abandon the truth from the jazz. What does that mean? Like, we know, like, jazz to me, as we were speaking earlier, it's like a soothing type of music. So what does that mean to you? What's that
Well,
involved?
I'm glad you asked. Someone asked me that on a podcast recently too, and it was for the first time someone asked me that on a podcast only about maybe a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago. Basically, at that time when that bio was written, what was happening with jazz is they were taking the word jazz and they were just putting it on things that people liked. In other words, as a selling mechanism. Do you know what I'm saying? So they would put it on something and it would be something that people liked, but it didn't really have the art form of jazz in it. And you would listen to, us musicians, we would listen to that artist and say, wow, that's crazy. They're calling it jazz. And then not only would they do that, and not that the artist was bad, it was good music. We've talked off camera. We both like many different styles of music. But you can't, to take and put the word jazz on it was very strange, because the person would listen, like someone like you would listen to it, not hear any jazz, but you wouldn't know because you don't know what jazz is in the first place. So that would make people think, okay, I like that, and they're telling me it's jazz, so that means I like jazz. But it's not, you're not really hearing jazz. So it was a very strange thing. What I was trying to do at that time was I was trying to be a marketable jazz artist within the art form of jazz. So my strategy, which was kind of bypassed by certain types of the greed of an industry, as you know, capital, the business in general, it lends itself. People want to make as much money as they can, and if they can change this or move that or do this to make more money, corporations, it's their profit motive. And
Well,
that was
it is
happening with
about
jazz.
corporations. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was happening. That was happening with jazz. So you'd have, not only would the person they put the jazz label on, but the person would come and win jazz awards at the award ceremony. Maybe it was the Grammys, and you see all these awards going to that person. Nothing wrong with their music. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't jazz. So I wanted to, people to know that I was going to try to remain in that idiom, so that when you heard my presentation, maybe you might enjoy it, but you were also hearing jazz as well. I wasn't going to, abandon that art form and keep the name jazz on it.
So let's back a little bit, not a little bit, actually a while back.
Okay.
So tell us a little bit about you. How did you start out? What got you involved in music, in jazz? Was it from childhood? What's your story in this regard?
Well, a piano came into my house when I was a kid growing up on Christmas Eve. So, and I was waiting to catch Santa Claus because I fell asleep every year. I was trying and I'd fall asleep. And I did everything I could to stay awake. And when this piano came in, I had to be very careful because my parents didn't like this activity of mine trying to catch Santa Claus. So, they were hoping that I was asleep already. And when the piano came into the house, I happened to be able to catch that it was a kind of a heavy fat man at the back moving that piano in. So I assumed that was Santa Claus. So that's what got me to start trying to figure out what this was. I figured if Santa brought it in, there must be a reason. I better figure it out, you know? So that kind of started it. And it also started improvisation, because by trying to learn it on my own, I was kind of playing and improvising and listening, that kind of thing. That led to studying music, and you know, I really didn't know anything about jazz because, you know, as you know, it's not played on the, you know, it wasn't played on the radio at that time. You know, maybe I was hearing the bands that you liked, you talk about you like, but before that, the period before that, you know, the rock bands and all that. And I like that music a lot. And I was studying classical music because I kind of got caught trying to learn the piano on my own secretly. So my parents had me start taking piano lessons. So I'm learning classical music, I'm listening to the music on the radio, and then I'm in a library, and just by accident, I opened a drawer, and in the drawer, I saw all these records, and I was like, what is this? This is very strange. It was almost like I discovered something by accident, you know, it wasn't on display, you had to open the drawer. And I was like, who are all these guys and what is this? And I started taking those records out of the library and listening to them. And that was kind of the start of the journey that never ends, because jazz is just a giant ocean of contribution by so many people. And, you know, even the jazz artist is hoping to make his little drop in the water. So you keep learning, and the studying and the learning is part of the enjoyment of it, as well as the opportunity to reach people for the first time. Again, as is part of a little kind of a challenge, you know, I like to be able to deliver jazz in a way that people still hear the art form, but it doesn't all go flying over their head, so they don't understand it, and they have an enjoyable experience with it.
So basically, did you taught yourself how to play the piano?
Well, I was teaching myself how to play, like improvisation and stuff, but then I was studying classical music, you know, the great classical composers of the 1800s, 1700s, etc., you know, whether it was Mozart or Beethoven or Chopin, etc. And then by studying, I knew how to read music and those kind of things. So I was kind of a functional musician relatively early. I had a paper route. I was a paper boy. So, you know, I don't know if they still have that because people now do things digitally, but back then everything was, you know, and the paper would be printed. They drop the papers off. You'd have a little bicycle. You took the paper on the bicycle, you throw it. You know, I used to love to throw the paper at the house, you know. I used to break the screen door sometimes, and I would lose money on my paper route because I broke 2 or 3 screen doors. I have to pay for them out of my paper route money. It was a loss. But anyway, you know, the idea was to hit the porch and not break the window. So I'm playing now. So anyway, I'm doing that. And what's happening is I'm starting to get pretty ambitious on the paper route. I've got, you know, a route in the morning. Another paper boy gave me his paper route next to his. Then I got the afternoon route, which was up where I lived. But then the music stuff started coming. My homeroom teacher, his sons played the guitar and bass, I think, or 2 guitars. I'm pretty sure it was guitar. One played guitar, one played bass. And they wanted to get a drummer and have another guy. And they wanted to have this band that played in the school dances. So he wanted me to play in that band. So I got in that band, and we started, you know, playing in the little school parties, proms, playing the music on from the radio. You know, Elton John, Grand Funk Railroad, these bands that had the top 40 hits. Then from there, my mother was the church organist, and she wanted me to take over for her and play in the church. So now I'm doing the church organist. I got that bit. Then another person, he played the grown-up parties. He was a grown-up, you know, he was as old as my parents. And he was a drummer, and he needed me in his band to play all these private parties, even though I wasn't old enough. We would go into, you know, places where you had to be 18 and all that. And they said, look, you know, they're not going to throw you out because we won't have a piano player. So just don't say anything. We'll bring you out. Everything will be fine. And, you know, so I would go in there, you know, and they gave me some free drinks too. I was underage. But anyway, he would drive me home so that I didn't have to worry about any of that. But this guy would pick me up, bring me there, drive me home. So all three of these things going on, I had to quit the paper route. And that was the last job that I ever had, as far as a non-music job, was the paper job. I had my first and my last. But, there's still time to go, so who knows? But it's the only job up until now.
So I want to ask you about the process when you were learning, because like people in general, when they learn anything, whether it's music, how to play an instrument or a new language or whatever it is that they are learning, sometimes it gets frustrating for them to process to the next point. Was it like this for you, or did you enjoy the process of learning more every day and failing and trying again and succeeding?
Well, I kind of enjoyed, once I started learning on my own, which was right away, I kind of enjoyed the process of exploring on my own. So I enjoyed that, but I couldn't do it all the time because sometimes they'd be listening. My mother would be listening. Well, they wanted me to practice with the lesson, So, but basically, the teacher I had, she kind of really thought I was talented at classical piano. So I didn't want to let her down, to be honest with you. She took so much of an interest in me, and I could tell I was kind of her prize student. I was her she really thought I was going to be something in music. So I would kind of learn my lesson so I wouldn't let her down just well enough, not to let her down. And then I would kind of explore when nobody was paying attention, which was a lot of times because, people had to do stuff in the house and they were busy with other things. So they couldn't really listen to what I was practicing. And if I did practice, I was kind of left alone, So sometimes, if I wasn't practicing, I'd have to be raking leaves or, splitting wood, things like that, which I did anyway. But, if they noticed I was at the piano, at that time, they couldn't really ask me because I was already occupied. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So, like, what time did you think you started to be good at it, and how long did it take you? Because, like I mentioned earlier, people get frustrated and quit. So, how long it took you to be good at it and realize now that I am really good at this and I can now go to, let's say, another level, expert level?
Well, very early on, I was playing my classical pieces with quite a bit of maturity. Now, that could be because my father was a musician before he became a lawyer, but he was a musician at one time. He played the French horn and he played classical music. My mother also played the organ in church. So, I had the musical background, so I was hearing music maybe. My parents used to play Mozart concertos. My father would play the French horn and my mother would play the orchestral piece. And that was just, I was absolutely awed by that. I just thought it was incredible that they were able to do this. And it wasn't often that they did it, but every now and then I was so impressed by that. So I just don't know. I liked music a lot. So I did have, maybe I had a few little advantages along that line. But as far as frustrating, jazz, when I got into jazz, that can be frustrating because there's so much going on in that genre, because you can incorporate classical harmonies into jazz. You can study the masters, which you have to do to some degree, but I mean, some people are incredible at studying the masters. They, transcribe all of their notes and they sound like 3 or 4 of their favorite, musicians, then you have the person who wants to sound like himself. And that's, a whole nother journey. So it can be frustrating. Jazz itself can be frustrating, just trying to, because there's so much, you have to be careful that you realize, hey, there's only so much time in a day and I have to choose what I want to do. And not only that, but you have to be patient. So it's really important, classical music as well, take a 1 bar and master that 1 bar and you won't feel overwhelmed. Because I think what you're talking about is a person looks at like the whole history of jazz and they're overwhelmed because, they'll never be able to play it all. And the person looks at the whole classical piece. Oh my God, this is crazy. And then I get 5 pages, or 3 pages. Oh, this is, so try to focus on a little tiny piece and learn that. And then see if you can take that little piece you learn and use it to your advantage to learn the other parts. So I think those are important things to know.
So what excites you about this business or industry today compared to, like, for example, 20 years ago? Is there a difference?
What excites me, what has excited me is the business I created. So what happened is, through jazz, you are studying creativity. And I was improvising and it probably sparked creativeness in me, or innovativeness, doing it with music all the time. So I had traveled all over the world as a musician, and I played all styles of music too, and I enjoyed them all too. But I was always studying jazz because it was just a never-ending study. I mean, you're really a student forever. Even if you're a teacher, you're still a student. You might be teaching somebody this, but you in your head are trying to learn this because you're studying that. So I played all over the world with lots of different bands and with my own groups because my CDs had come out and I was a leader. When 9/11 hit, I wrote a poem called "Jazz for Peace" on that day, watching that because I was living so close to that World Trade Center, and it started to take on a life of its own, and I read that poem at a jazz festival. See, the whole country was closed for like a couple weeks, I think, and then it opened just in time for me to go to a jazz festival where I read the poem. Then the next concert, I put the poem to music, and they announced that, I'd started out the concert with Jazz for Peace, and I was starting to take traction on its own. It had already been launched by, this publicity. And I started to create things with Jazz for Peace that fit what I had learned from being a musician, because from being a musician, I had learned things. I had learned that, you can transcend, things like language barriers and, religious barriers and, distance barriers and all kinds of things, creed and culture and all kinds of stuff could be transcended through music. And I realized that, music had a healing powers. It could help people. And after a while with Jazz for Peace, just, with this new putting on Jazz for Peace concerts, etc., I started to realize that you could help outstanding causes. And by helping outstanding causes, you could actually redefine the definition of peace, because we had thought that peace was, you stand up for this and you flower power and, you stand in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square and all these kinds of things. But in truth, you can help outstanding causes, and that's a path to peace, because not only are you helping that cause, but you're helping all the people that the cause helps. So what we would do is start helping those who are helping others. And what I did, because of the publicity I received at the beginning of those concerts, and as I continued, I had asked my manager to contact the United Nations and tell them that I wanted to unite Israeli, Palestinian, and American jazz musicians at the United Nations in the very first Jazz for Peace concert. And because I had already noticed that, there's this problem over there where you are in Jordan, you had the Israelis and Palestinians at war. I didn't know the extent of it, but I knew they were supposedly at war. Yet every time I ran into an Israeli and a Palestinian together with music, you couldn't tell there was any problem. They were getting along just fine around me. And we were all having a great time playing jazz, sometimes in someone's apartment, sometimes, in a club. So that concert actually united Israeli, Palestinians, and Americans, and that took a year to get together. So 9/11 was 2001. That concert was September 25th, 2002, at the United Nations, and that concert started to get noticed. It didn't get noticed right then and there that much, in my opinion, but as time went on and the benefit concert series continued, it started to get noticed, and I started to get letters from people who were world leaders. Even the president of the United States at that time sent me a letter, and they would just tell me that, we want you to know that that was really significant, what you did that day, or, you know what I mean? It's the 5th anniversary of it. And hey, that was really, now that we see the direction the world is going and all these problems, what you did and what you're doing with your benefit concert series is very significant. It makes a difference in our world. And I realize that we have a problem with things kind of upside down because of the capitalist format that we live in, and many people thrive in it, and they're used to it and they're addicted to it somewhat. But the problem with it is, you have a situation where, unfortunately, things that generate income, like military, bombs and all those kinds of stuff generates lots of money. So that's being funded at 100%, and you have peace being funded at 0%. Yet if you look at what Jazz for Peace does, and we welcome people to look at it, you'll see all that we've achieved with nothing. What if you were to fund war at 99% instead of 100? Just take that 1% and fund peace. Who knows what would happen? Because if you go to, we have a website called, it's a WordPress site actually, jazzforpeace.org is our website, but jazzforpeace.wordpress.com/about. And that website has a picture of our empowerment tree, and it has testimonials. It also has quotes from the world leaders who sent me the letters, from all over Kenya, Africa, the prime minister, all kinds of places. And below that is the testimonials from all the events. There have been over 850. And you can read from the actual people that we performed for and whose organizations we helped, and in their own words, what they had to say about it. And it's kind of amazing to me. It's amazing to me.
So let me back a little bit. You mentioned that, and it's known like music, like you mentioned, it crosses the barriers of language, cultures, these kind of things. And I'm sure like, for example, the silent TV shows or movies, even these connect with a lot of people, because even if they don't speak. So why do you think that music can connect people on multiple levels, though maybe sometimes they don't understand what they are listening to actually?
Well, I'll tell you why. If you ever type into Google my name and then famous quote, so you would put Rick DellaRatta and then you would put famous quote, my quote comes up for some reason. I had an interview way back. Now, this was in the days just after 9/11. Someone had interviewed me because of that poem. And someone interviewed me, and that just a sentence in the article was lifted and became a famous quote. And in that quote, I actually say that if we fill our souls up with qualities, certain qualities like, humanity and intellectualism and individualism and, all of these sorts of things, that we will have a better chance at avoiding the behavior that leads to destruction. And it's just a simple quote. The problem is, as we get more destructive as a species, that quote becomes more important. So the quote is, it's used by all those famous quotes websites. And basically from that quote, music and the art form of jazz in particular as well has all of those qualities. First and foremost, it stimulates your intellect. So music and children, I mean, if you go to anywhere, there's posters all over this office here. You see them behind me, but they're all over the place. And down there is a poster, basically of the first concert that brought together American and Afghanistan musicians, and that took place in California. And so there was my band, and there was a famous Afghanistan performer. I didn't know how famous he was until I got in a cab once, and I was riding in the cab, and the cab driver was driving. I said, "Hey, where are you from?" Because I always ask people where they're from because I'd probably been there. He said, "Afghanistan." I said, oh, I haven't been to your country, but I performed on a double bill with supposedly a well-known Afghan. And we said, well, who was it? And I said, I think it was Najim Nawabi, something like that. He was like, oh my God, it's my favorite. You know, he had all his records and all that. So anyway, that music was very different for me. I had never heard it before. I was like, wow, that is some holy Jesus. But again, that is stimulating the intellect of their people the same way that, you know, jazz, you know, so it's a stimulator of the intellect, but it also has all of those other qualities that I mentioned together. And you know what? That's common ground with all people. We all have the potential for these qualities. So that gives us a common ground to work with.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What do you think the best advice that you have ever got or received?
The best advice I ever got or received, there's been a lot. I think one of the best advice that I read, this is somewhat recently, but just in studying something called Stoic philosophy, it is that to, you know, not get overly emotional about that which you have no control over. Because, you know, and that can save a lot of time, because sometimes I find myself in situations where I'm so distraught or disappointed or upset about something, but I have no control over it. There's nothing I can do about that. There are certain things I can control, and I realize those are the things I can control are the things that I can put a lot of emotion and energy into, because I actually can affect the outcome. But if it's not something I can control, that could be wasted energy. I could get all tired out over that, and then I don't have any energy left to get through the day for the things I can make a difference with.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, one of the simple things is traffic, being jammed in traffic. So a lot of you can't control that.
Yeah, so here's an interesting quality that music can help you with traffic if you're a musician. See, one time someone told me that they studied with a famous jazz musician, and they asked him, how did you get so good? And the person would say, well, he would practice away from his instrument, you know, because, you know, sometimes he'd be you're on tour, you're on the road, you're in practice, but you're in traffic, right? You can't get to your instrument, so now you're ruining your practicing time. You think it's getting lost, and instead of getting all mad because you're stuck in traffic, you can actually practice in your mind, and then guess what? You're loving the traffic because you're getting your practicing done. If you had to move and you had to concentrate on the road, you wouldn't be able to practice. But because you're stuck, you're practicing, and you actually start thinking, boy, I could use a little more traffic. Let's jam it up some more so I can practice some more. And it turns the tables on it.
Yeah. At least listen to some music while you're driving. So that will take the pressure off, I guess. So
that could do it as well, of course.
Yeah, some jazz. So what or who inspires you to do what you do?
You know, the great thing about what I'm doing is I can be inspired because I'm a musician, so I can be inspired by great jazz musicians or great musicians in general. Like, you know, today when I play a little song for you, I'm actually going to play something that's not even by a jazz musician as part of the medley. So, you know, you can be inspired by that, but because I'm doing something in philanthropy and humanity, I get to draw the inspiration from people like a Gandhi or a Martin Luther King or, you know, a Jesus or, you know, anyone who has contributed to humanity, to, you know, do you know what I mean? All religions have someone that is amazing, you know, Buddha, you know what I mean? You know, in the Muslim religion, all of them. And you can be inspired by that person who does good or who did good in accordance with those scriptures. That person can be inspirational to you.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So what something have you learned recently that made you think, oh, that's amazing that I have learned?
Well, this is something that's interesting when you're studying, when you're a musician, a jazz musician, because what happens is you'll learn one concept and that'll open up the door to another concept. So as a jazz musician, you spend most of your time thinking, how did I even go so long playing without learning that? Because you just realize that that's in front of you to learn it. But you do get, once you kind of get that and it comes into your playing, you have those few days where you can feel like, wow, I can't believe I can play this, you know? So that'll be, you know, you'll have that feeling. But then the problem is that will open up another door of something you don't know, and now you have to learn that again. So that could be for music, but also in life. A lot of times you make a mistake and you learn from it, and so you know, it's a great opportunity to learn from each mistake.
So if you had the opportunity to go back in time, is there something that you will do differently, or do you think you know, everything is fine?
You know, I was asked that recently too in a print article. Someone sent me questions for a print article. And I think that my answer to that was, if I could go back in time, you know, see, I wouldn't want to get rid of the mistakes. A lot of times it's very strange because what I wanted to do did not work. I was rejected, or I tried to do something where there was corruption, and I couldn't get accepted because, you know, they only choose you know what I mean, or for whatever reason, or for whatever the reason was, I'm trying to do this and I'm ending up doing that. But that opened doors that I wouldn't trade for to get this. So, you know, these opportunities I've had to go to all these different places that I never would have been able to go to, I wouldn't trade. So I wouldn't even, like, my mistakes I wouldn't trade for, because I was able to learn from them. The only thing I would probably like to do is, it would be nice if you could learn quickly from your mistakes. So it would be nice if I could maybe learn faster, you know, because sometimes you make a mistake, it takes you a while to learn your lesson.
Yeah. So about learning faster, so what are the things that you would think yourself not good at? For example, you are a pretty good jazz player and pianist, but what things that you are not good at and like to, for example, delegate to other people?
Well, you know, to be good at, you have to make choices. So in other words, let's say you want to be a good musician. If you want to be a good musician, you can't, you know, have 3 different jobs. You know, you can't be a bank teller and drive a cab and, you know what I mean, 5 other things. So you would have to make choices. You know, you would have to make choices. There's lots of things I like to do, but I have to make a choice. I can't, you can't throw the ball, then run and hit the ball, you know, then run out in the field and catch the ball. So you have to make those choices, and that's what you have to decide. I mean, do I want to excel? And as a musician, I mean, you hopefully never really think you're good, because there's always something in front of you to learn a new thing.
So what would you say for people who are listening to us, that there are some tools or resources or even books that you recommend in general to people, and maybe specifically to people who are, let's say, into music?
Well, one thing I've been recommending lately, which I brought up to you, one of those things earlier, which was, you know, don't put too much energy into that which you can't control. That actually comes from Stoic philosophy. And Stoicism comes from a Roman emperor. And apparently there were 5 good Roman emperors, and there were a lot of bad ones, apparently, crazy Roman emperors. But this one guy ruled Rome for 32 years. His name was Marcus Aurelius. And the crazy thing is, he wrote notes to himself all the time. Then he died, and people found the notes. And they were not meant for anyone else to read. They were never meant to be published. It was never part of a book. He was never going to try and sell it. So it wasn't anything that he was changing to make a sale. You know what I mean? Oh, let's make the book so everybody will like it. It was just his own notes of going through life. And then they published that, which became a book called Meditations. I've never really read the whole book per se, but I've read a lot of excerpts from it. But just from him and other people that were like-minded, you know, they also had these names like Epictetus and these other Greek names. But anyway, there's a bunch of those guys, and they kind of put them together, and they call it Stoic philosophy. And I think that's helpful for a musician. It could be helpful for anybody, but I think it could be very helpful for a musician to put things in perspective, because a lot of times you might have to give up, let's say, fame in order to achieve in the arts, because you might not be able to be at every cocktail party schmoozing with this guy or that guy, because you might have to be practicing in order to, get to the next level of your musical goal or composing or whatever it is. So you have to, because, sometimes we're getting messages like, oh, this is the ideal person of society, but then you see the person's life and it was a train wreck, he might have had millions of dollars, but he was unhappy, he became drug addicted and died, and, this and that. And some people don't really achieve much beyond, a superficial type of financial wealth or et cetera. So, that philosophy can kind of help you put things into perspective, and realize that, a lot of wealth comes from within, first of all, but not everything you see is exactly, that's being presented to is exactly what it is. It's like, as Facebook, where I think this is streaming live, we all know that everyone puts their best 6 minutes, their best 2 minutes of the day on Facebook. You know what I mean? It's not a reflection of their whole life. And it's easy for people on social media. They look at someone, oh my God, they're having a great day, but their day was just ruined because they think, wow, I should have been doing that. Not really. You're doing your thing. You're having a great day. And he's just putting up a minute or two, be happy for his joy, but don't think that all 24 hours were like that.
What would you say one takeaway for this episode for the SuccessGrid Nation, Rick?
Well, as a takeaway, I would like people to consider the possibility that you yourself can play a significant role in making our world better. What we're doing right now is we're watching YouTube, we're watching podcasts, we're watching this and that, and looking to see how everybody else is going to solve the problems of the world. You follow me? But let's say, for example, you in Jordan could make a phenomenal difference in your community simply by identifying an outstanding cause, taking this podcast, showing it to them, and saying, hey, this person has been to Pakistan, he's been to Nepal, I just finished his 9th event in Africa. He's done 850 concerts. Why don't we have him do something for the people of Jordan? And now
That'd be cool.
Yeah. And so now, they do that. I come to Jordan. I see all, hopefully you guys show me around when I get there, because I want to see the country and all that and enjoy myself.
Yes.
But at the same time, we do something for an incredible cause in Jordan. Like when I was in Pakistan, we helped the literacy problem, you know what I mean? So when I was in Brazil, we helped the orphan, the homeless problem with orphans. So, and food issues. So, we do something like that. And now we're, you actually have been a part of making, of world peace, even though people don't think that, they think, oh, well, I'm just little old me, but you're not. You have the ability to do amazing things, as the example that I just gave just now.
Yeah, so people have to take initiative to do things, not just stand still and look
they
at
can,
things.
and Jazz for Peace provides a place for you to take an initiative if you, because a lot of people say, geez, I want to do something, I don't know what. Well, you could just contact Jazz for Peace and we can help you, because we have a model that has helped over 850 outstanding causes, and we can show that model to that person, and they themselves, wow, let me show this to, this outstanding cause, or this, someone recently was telling me they want to help, they love animals, and they want to show it to an organization that helps animals, and which we've already done all over the world. And, now that's making, now they're in it. Now they're actually making a contribution to something that's going to affect someone in a profoundly positive way, as the art form of jazz has a history of doing.
Awesome. So can you now please share with us the 2-3 minutes piece that you play on?
Sure. So what I'll do for you today, and this is an attempt because I know you're really not familiar with jazz, I'm going to recite the Jazz for Peace poem and just improvise like I was doing as a little kid trying to learn the piano. I'm going to start with that. So you're going to sound like, underneath the poems, it'll sound like almost what I was 6 years old. Then we're going to go to that, to a free improvisation that I'm going to make up. But it's called Free JA. And that is something that we're doing to kind of promote freedom of speech and also freedom of journalism. You know, journalists to be able to do their job and write what they see and not be persecuted for, you know, telling the truth. And then we're going to go into a song. Yeah, then we're going to go into a song that was actually made famous by Elvis Presley. So not a jazz artist at all, but it has a social awareness to it, the song. It's called In the Ghetto, and it's one of the few songs by him or by any pop artist at that time that had that was social conscious in its lyrics. So we'll see what happens.
Yep.
I hear jazz for peace coming through the trees. And in my heart it fills me like a celebration. I see the light. And I want to follow. Inspired by the past contributions of those that came before, and laid the groundwork for us to build on in this universal language that is a gift for all mankind. And when we speak it, people are enlightened by the creativity and artistry that stands for peace and love and humanity. An intelligence that leads to reaching potential that we have in our soul. Of giving is our greatest privilege. I hear jazz for peace. another hungry mouth to feed in the ghetto. People don't just understand. The child needs a helping hand. He don't want to be an angry young man someday. Take a look at you and me. All that you like to see. Do you simply turn our heads and walk the other way? Will the world turn? And a hungry little boy with a running nose who lays in the streets as the cold wind blows in the ghetto. And this hunger burns. So he starts to roam the streets at night, and he learns how to steal, and he learns how to fight in the ghetto. And one night in desperation, the young man breaks away. He buys a gun, steals a car, tries to run, but they don't get far, and his mama cries. So the crowd gathers round an angry young man face down in the streets with a gun in his hand in the ghetto. And as her young man dies, in gray Chicago morning, another little baby child is born in the ghetto. And his mama cries.
Cool. Very awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Very cool.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
hopefully that I hope that I wasn't the only one that watched that. It's actually amazing that to watch an artist live, so that was a great experience.
Great.
Awesome, great. So Rick, where can people get in touch with you so can learn more about you, about your message?
Sure. So, like I said, one interesting thing to do is, one thing I would say, watch your show, and then after you've seen what you've seen, send us an email about what you thought, because you can send the email to info at jazzforpeace.org. So that's info for info at jazzforpeace, jazzforpeace.org. Tell us what you thought. Believe it or not, that's easy letter A of the easy ABC steps for Jazz for Peace funding. So if you send that in, you've already completed easy letter A. Now, that's what we call a seedling from a tree. So many seedlings stop. We get comments all the time. And it's like a little seedling. A tree will have hundreds of seedlings, but if you're related to an outstanding cause, you've completed easy letter A with that comment, and now we grow that comment into funds because we go to easy letter B, which is sharing. We'll put it in a document what you want to do. We'll share it. You can share it with your other board members and friends, and they give their comments. That puts it into roots, and then we expand that further, and that completes the roots planting process. And now you've done your part with us for our slogan, which is help us plant the roots so we can grow your empowerment tree. So that's one easy way with just an email. Of course, jazzforpeace.org is our website. And for me personally, my name, you can type in Rick DellaRatta, famous quote, as I told you, but rickdellarata.com is my website.
Awesome. Rick, thank you for being here. Very inspirational, motivational, and lively, I would say. So awesome. Thank you for your amazing soul and for your work. Thank you very much for being here today with me on this episode of the SuccessGrid podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.